Continue to asak. I just want to thank Nora for allowing us to do this song, and I hope we were able to do it as you would like it. Kunishchish, Nora.
Our next number before we go out is titled Gochani.
As you would like. Kunishchish, Nora.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Sealaska's special Zoom today. Welcome our Sealaska Chair, Joe Nelson.
Thank you, Dixie. The video thing here saying I'm not able to share video, but maybe we can work on that. Good afternoon, shareholders. My name is Joe Nelson, Chairman of the Board, Sealaska. Still working on the video feed here, but we've got 1 hour budgeted. It's noon Alaska time. And there was an announcement made last week about this thing called the Seacoast Trust. And the intent today for the next hour is to share a little bit of information with shareholders, have some time for question and answers, and to dive in a little deeper on what this project is all about. There we go. So good to Zoom with everybody. Still looking forward to getting out of this pandemic. Hopefully folks are being safe, taking care of each other, and weathering this latest wave safely. Streaming from Aquan in Juneau. Happy to be here. Clinket name is Kahaku. I'm a brown bear. Takeway D from Yakutat, child of the Quashkakwan. Today, our CEO, Anthony Malott, is going to join in just a minute here following me as an opening. And we're going to have a conversation with Anthony. Also joining us, Elena Peterson and Ralph Wolf from Spruce Root and Sustainable Southeast Partnership. So again, happy to be here. About an hour dedicated to Seacoast Trust, taking a little deeper dive with shareholders, a little opportunity for question and answers, and I'll get us rolling here. It was over a year ago now, about a year and a half or so ago. There was a group of us, Sealaska, Clinkenida, Spruce Root, other partners, took a trip to Vancouver, British Columbia, and that was a trip coordinated by the Nature Conservancy. And the Nature Conservancy's version over in Canada, I think they're called Nature United. And it was a multi-day event, and we really didn't know what we were getting into, but we showed up there as partners to go ahead and go on this learning journey together. We came out of that trip with some ideas and plans and thoughts on how we can help Southeast, our entire region, get to another level. Southeast Sustainable Southeast Partnership has been around for over 10 years. You'll hear more about that in a minute here. But really, we were coming to a crossroads, it seemed like, at Sealaska, as far as natural resources and our plans for the future. You know, at the end of the day, Sealaska is about land and the land base here. We really only retained fee simple title to less than 1% or 2% of our land base, but we want to really continue to help manage the entire Tongass in ways that are meaningful for all of our Native communities. And the Sustainable Southeast Partnership has been doing similar work, related work in a lot of our communities. But one place to go to learn a little bit more about the idea is Coast Funds. Coast Funds BC. We visited with Coast Funds BC in British Columbia, and their program started in 2007. It started with $120 million, and it really has two different funds. One is focused on stewardship of the land, and another one on economic development. And Coast Funds provided somewhat of a roadmap or blueprint for us to follow, and we thought it was about time that we do a similar thing. And we've already got a network in place, and we're already doing a lot of great things. But how do we get it to another level? It's by focusing on the funding effort to shore things up and put this vision into something that's more tangible and certain, with some security, and get partners to the table to help manage Southeast, all of our economies, and get better at stewardship. So last week, there was an announcement that Sealaska put forward a challenge of $10 million, and looking for a partner to match that fund. And the Nature Conservancy came forward with $7 million to match. And I know they're working on fundraising additional funds. But the concept is really to launch this thing now and grow the fund, ideally to a $100 million size fund, to build something that is going to really have the similar two strands, one on stewardship and one on economic development. So today we're going to hear a little bit about what we've been doing through Sustainable Southeast Partnership and Spruce Fruit, and also have some question and answers and start thinking about the next 50 years. We're celebrating 50 years of AKST right now and 50th year of Sealaska next year, and looking forward to the next 50 years. So it's, as I mentioned earlier, really this is all about land, and our grandparents and great-grandparents pursued this land entitlement and settlement, not for one generation, but for their grandkids and great-grandkids. And we're excited that we're partnering with partners like the Nature Conservancy, and now looking for other partners to come to the table and continue growing this thing so that our great-grandkids are able to live off the land and be connected to the land, as a lot of us had the benefit of doing. And it's just a good time and place. I'm going to stop my comments and ask our CEO, Anthony, to turn on his video and tune in, and then he'll be able to introduce Elena and Ralph, and then we'll move into question and answers. Thanks for joining. You're on mute, Anthony.
Of course I am. Thank you. Good Chief Joe. Thank you for the introduction and kickoff for the exciting announcement that we had last week, and then the follow-on with our shareholder base, giving you all a sense of what this means to you and why Sealaska took this step at this point in time. I do have some slides I'd like to share that I think give a good sense of why this announcement, why right now, why do we think the SSP needs to keep going and growing for the benefit of our lands and our communities, as Joe mentioned, and why is this moment in time so unique? Anybody that was able to join at our event last week got a sense of the importance of the timing, and the importance of the steps Sealaska took to catalyze the Seacoast Trust to be able to fund the work of the SSP. And I'll go ahead and start with just some, try and make it as transparent as possible about what this implies. What does $20 million for the Seacoast Trust get us, Sealaska, our shareholders, our communities? Because we often, for Joe and I, for Elena, for Ralph, for the folks that have been doing this work for almost 10 years at this point in time, we are kind of used to the complexity. We are used to everything that is the SSP, but we have to pull ourselves back and really describe it in a manner that allows us to think about why this is the right thing to do for Sealaska. And I will start with my share, because I hope it becomes familiar to our shareholders that we want our shareholder benefits to grow. It's part of the whole reason we have really focused on our business success, our focus on ocean health, our carbon projects that bring in great income. when we have business success, it leads to community success. When we have business success, it leads to shareholder success. And so as we created our business turnaround, the first thing our shareholders saw was an increase in dividends. In 2020, we gave $18 million in dividends to our shareholders, in comparison to 2015, when we were providing just over $6 million. So a threefold increase in dividends. But also as we create financial success, we find moments in time where we have dollars or funding that can broaden our shareholder benefit areas. And so I'd ask our shareholders to go back to a survey we did in 2018. And at the very top of this, the shareholder priorities in that survey was education and scholarships. So Sealaska had the opportunity to listen to the shareholder voice and say, okay, we're going to add $10 million to our scholarship endowment. And we repeat this because we just want to make sure that the shareholders know that these funding opportunities, these new shareholder benefits that we're putting out there come from your voice. In that 2018 survey, language revitalization was the second highest shareholder priority. And in 2020, we stood up our language endowment with $10 million. And so you get this trend of the shareholder priorities leading where we invest our dollars for the greatest shareholder benefit. And I want to thank every shareholder that responded to our last survey just this year. And we have a kind of a new priority list. Dividends have always been up in the ranks. And I hope that the growth in dividends proved that we do focus on this. And dividends is, in terms of the dollar amount, the largest way we benefit our shareholder base. But our shareholders prioritize so many other different avenues for shareholder benefit. And as I walk down this list, and I hope it's prompting Elena and Ralph when I introduce them, because they can speak to how the SSP works across so many of these areas. They work in education if our communities prioritize that. They advocate for our native rights and the benefits of our communities consistently. They have many job training and workforce development projects and programs throughout the network. They have a growing set of youth programs. You see, all of these just stack up as shareholder priorities. And right here, the broadest category that they work on is community economic development. All kind of top 5, top 10 areas that our shareholders said, we want our benefits. We want shareholders to benefit us in these categories. And for the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about how SSP works across all of these areas for the benefit of our communities. And so because of this, the $10 million that we put forward as an opportunity to catalyze investment into the SSP network was recently matched by a very strong long-term partner, the Nature Conservancy. The SSP has been in existence for 12 years at this point in time. The Nature Conservancy was there from the very beginning. They have been doing very meaningful projects throughout Southeast that whole entire time period. They've invested in Spruce Root. They've invested in our entrepreneurs through the Path to Prosperity contest that we hold annually that fosters entrepreneurial spirit in Southeast. And they've just been, side by side, Sealaska, our tribes, our communities, and working on all of these areas that our shareholders prioritize. And it was fantastic to see them step forward with a good proportion of our match and put us very close to our goal of having $20 million in an endowment that will provide annual funding to the SSP network to keep on going and growing with all of the great projects that they have under their wings. And because of how exciting that is to us, we want to make sure that everybody understands what is the SSP and spend the bulk of our time today talking about that. And I'll go ahead and open the floor to Ralph and Elena to introduce themselves. And then I'll keep sharing my screen because we have a few case studies of SSP projects. One of many, a few of many SSP projects that have occurred over the last decade, but ones that we think tell the story of the SSP in a pretty resonating manner. And so I'll stop sharing for a little bit and open the floor to Elena to introduce herself, and then Ralph to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Anthony. Good to see you on here. Good enough cheese to all the shareholders and everyone calling in to this today. Gakitin you hut to a sock. Yale ayahat. Fluknahari nahat city. Digna hit dah ayahat. My name is Elena Peterson. I live in Sitka, where I grew up with my family, and I now, I left to go to college, like most people do, and was gone for quite a while, and then came back when I was hired by Sealaska to start in what's become this journey that I'm on now. And so I've been here since 2013 working on all of this. And if you told me back then that we'd be in this place that we are today, making this announcement, I wouldn't have believed you, because at that time when I came back, it was so clear to me that the way things were working in our region, the way people were trying to get ahead, and how our communities were struggling and trying to make it make a future for the next generations, I just knew that something had to change. And with my background and my passion being in community development work and economic development, I just felt like I needed to spend my time working on that here. So I feel like this announcement with Seacoast Trust is a big milestone for me that is a culmination of years of trying to change the way that we work in the region and shift the narrative and bring together all the amazing people and skills and knowledge that exists here in the region. And so to me, that's really what SSP represents. But that's sort of a philosophical approach to the explanation. So to introduce Spruce Root a little bit, if you're not familiar, Spruce Root is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a Native community development financial institution, which is a designation that comes from the US Treasury, basically giving us the ability to access funding and programs that bring in capital to the region for lending to small businesses. So we've been doing that, building that program up for the past 10 years. And as we built that program, we also built up what we call our technical assistance services, which is support in the form of workshops, one-on-one coaching, business advising, and other programs such as the Path to Prosperity competition, things that support entrepreneurs here in the region to start and grow a business. And so I think one other thing I want to mention just as an introduction, when we talk about community and economic development, Spruce Root was created by Sealaska about 10 years ago. We're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. And we, when we first got going, we tried different things out to see what would work. And it became clear that we really needed to have representation in the region, meaning boots on the ground. We needed connection to the people and the communities in Southeast if we were actually going to make any kind of difference from an economic development standpoint. And so that was early on that we really realized that. And so we worked then to figure out, well, maybe we could put bodies into communities that are staff of Spruce Root. And, that would help solve that problem, because you really need to have, presence within the region in order to do good work. And so that's where the SSP came in for us. In order to approach that grassroots, like community driven approach, SSP was a network of individuals across the region that would connect and unite on a regular basis. And that became our boots on the ground for Spruce Root. And so we really were able to build out programs that responded to the needs that we were hearing from communities, and continue to pivot and change over each year after year, depending on the things that were changing around the region. And so I really just want to kind of highlight that as our approach to economic development at Spruce Root, but also how without SSP, without this network of people and organizations, I don't think we as an organization would be where we are today. So I'll pause there. That's my introduction for me and Spruce Root, and I'll hand it over to Ralph to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about what SSP is. I think your audio is.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Elena and Joe and Anthony. My name is Ralph Wolf. I'm the program director for the Sustainable Southeast Partnership. I live in Yakutat. I was born and raised in Craig. I think it's interesting to be here. I was an intern at Sealaska. I was the board youth rep about 10 or 11 years ago. And bringing it back full circle, I worked as a community catalyst for Yakutat for 3 years and have been at SSP almost a year now. And I think the way I look at the SSP and the connection it makes to all of those things, which was brought into great view by Anthony through the surveys, I think we touch almost every one of those categories. We do job development. We do work with restoration. We help promote language in any way possible. We help promote culture in any way possible. And I think every one of those aspects that Anthony was talking about earlier, it really resonated. I don't think I connected the two, but to see how this could work for Sealaska to be a great outreach tool by helping to start the Seacoast Trust, to really dig deep into looking at community and economic development and really being able to reach shareholders on a different level. Over the past couple of weeks, I've really thought about that and seen how that can happen and what's happening in communities. And I think I'm just excited to be a part of this program in this time and place, and to be here and with you guys on this journey has been so cool to see from like the beginning conversation of, hey, we should start a trust to fund this in perpetuity, to last week we announced we have the initial donation to start. That has been just mind-blowing. I think over the past couple of years, seeing how this network works and the outreach we're able to do and the community and visions we're able to get to from different villages is just on a different level than I've seen in any other way. We're able to work directly with communities and able to work directly with the people there, the boots on the ground, if you will, and offer support in many different ways, whether it's some financial ways or brainstorming or just connecting folks. I think that's where this network and the strength in this network really comes up. So Attain Gunachish, everybody, for being here today, and thank you, Sealaska, for helping us realize this so rapidly.
Perfect, Ralph. Thank you both for the introduction. And I'll start off with an easy one here, Ralph. The Yakutat Affordable Housing Development, and you can put yourself back into the time when you were a community catalyst. And I want to really highlight the SSP means jobs in our traditional communities. So the SSP helped fund Ralph's position when he worked on this great project that has benefited Yakutat. And I'll just start by asking Ralph, how did you identify that this was a community priority?
I missed the question there. My line was getting unmuted, Anthony.
How did you identify that this was a community priority?
The housing project?
Yes.
It was, I mean, I had just been mayor. I had started working with the city quite regularly and you know, at the tribe at the time I was working for the tribe, and we had to turn away folks because they couldn't find housing here. In Yakutat, a lot of housing that goes up on the market gets bought up by sports fishermen or groups of sports fishermen. And it's hard to find reliable year-round housing. And everybody understood that right off the bat. Everybody's like, yeah, we understand. We're trying to buy housing for police officers. We're trying to buy housing for clinic workers. The tribe was trying to hire new people because we're growing. And all these houses that have been in the community have gone out of town or out of state even. So it was pretty straightforward that everybody was on the same page, but we were doing different things in this. And this position at the SSP kind of allowed us. Oh, go ahead.
And so very clearly a community priority. When you think back, do you think the tribe could have done this by themselves? And what made you kind of reach out to the network and build what looks like a great partner network that created the fantastic outcome that was millions of dollars in new housing into Yakutat?
I think a part of it was I had some relationships with everybody. I was a catalyst before I was the catalyst, I think, of how to look at it. Getting everybody to the table was the thing, right? Everybody understood that. We were all trying to do the same thing, but in our own silo. So we broke those silos and everybody was able to kind of come together and be like, hey, this is what we need to do. The city gave us land at a heavily discounted price. The housing authority was able to work with the city on tax rates and purchasing more land. The tribe was able to use funding through the housing authority that was allocated to the tribe to do that. The SSP allowed us to have time to do that. Because right now, the tribes don't necessarily have housing folks on staff, right? Our regional housing authority is Clinton Haida. So it allowed us to have time to go and apply for, we applied for loans. That's how we funded a lot of this project, by Yakutat tribe applying for loans to build a couple houses and to buy some houses. We put our neck out there, and that's how it started. And then everybody saw, oh, we're serious. We started working more closely with the housing authority and used our allocated funding for some projects to make that happen. We applied for housing loans through Finance Corporation, through Bank 2. I mean, we stuck our neck out and showed that we were serious in the game and ready to make that step. And that's how it was.
And that's how the SSP works, right?
Yeah, just to add to his, there's a question in the chat. I think someone's asking, like, how did Yakutat Housing Project get funded? And this is exactly where the SSP, the power comes from. Is, I remember when Ralph was working on this project, and he would sort of put it out there to the network or on a phone call or in a group, meeting, and say, we're trying to get housing. we're trying to get funding, you know, this is the problem. And so he had this whole network of people around the region that were able to say, oh, have you tried this program? Did you know about that? And, or if he wanted help or support writing a grant or other eyes looking at a piece, at a document, you know, every community doesn't have all the same resources. And so be able to tap into the network, you know, Yakutat was able to get this project up and going a lot faster than if they had tried to do it on their own in a silo. And so that's where, you know, this question comes in. You know, someone else wants to know, how did you get that funding, Ralph? And so this is where the network is so powerful. Ralph can tell all the other partner orgs in the network, this is how we did it. We've already gone through this. And now another community is probably going through something very similar, and he can share that knowledge and wisdom. And this is sort of the ongoing activity of the network. It's just constantly sharing and you know, crowdsourcing within our region how we get things done.
And
Yeah, looking at this slide.
Sorry, but I was just going to highlight, because of that, more projects occur throughout Southeast than for our communities than otherwise would be occurring. And what Sealaska has seen is that these SSP projects are more successful. They get more dollars and more resources, and the outcomes are more beneficial to our communities.
Yeah, and I think it even changed how the housing authority looked at how they do business and how they approached looking at housing and communities. I think we helped sway that a little bit to be like, hey, we need new housing, and we need affordable housing, and we need a mixture. It can't just be low income. It can't just be straight for sale at the cost. It can't be, we need rentals. We need energy efficiency. We need all of those things. And looking at this slide, it's not just 6 housing units. We got 11. We have 11 housing units in a five-year time frame from that project, from being able to put time into it. I think that's the essence there, is we were able to put time and effort into housing. And that's where YTT, the tribe, decided to make it happen. Was, you're working on housing, and I worked on housing for 3 years straight. And I think the roll of the dice was that some stuff happened to come down the line, and we were ready when that happened, you know.
And it's a good reflection on another reason Sealaska believes in this model so much, is that the SSP, if it is funded through the Seacoast Trust on an annual basis, now let's just say $1 million funds the SSP, they go out and do projects throughout Southeast that should be providing close to 5 million or more in real economic benefit to our communities year after year. And because of the success you have, you can probably grow that. You can just get better at it. And again, when you bring on more communities, it's just going to be able to become an investment that just keeps on giving back year after year. And this is just one large dollar example of that. But we have another one that we think is interesting, because it's hard to quantify. It's not dollars, right? But the Klawak Lake sockeye is such a critical resource. You can, just like in Yakutat, you saw how important housing was. The fact that Klawak was losing one of their most ancient resource that kind of is so meaningful to them, instead of working on housing in Klawak, they wanted to work on addressing the decline of their sockeye salmon, and highlight this just because it indicates the breadth of projects that the SSP works on. And maybe just a brief minute before we move to Joe on kind of the diving into the Coast Fund model and what's next for SSP. If you and Elena could just kind of describe the uniqueness of the work done here and the outcomes created.
You want me to take this one off? So Yeah, the Cloac predation study started, that was one of the earlier, it started earlier in the partnerships existence. And it was definitely something that came out of the community. The tribe there said, this is something that matters to us and we want to know what is really going on and why are the sockeye not returning, or what's happening. And there were different theories based on who, different entities and what their agenda might be. And it was sort of a politically heated, discussion. Like most things, especially when we're talking about resources in the region, there was sort of like quickly wanting to point the finger at who's to blame. And so this predation study helped bring more knowledge and wisdom to the argument of what is actually happening and where are the sockeye, are they returning, and when they return, what happens to them. And what was really cool about it is it was locals doing this work. It wasn't, hired consultants or the government or someone else. It was locals on the ground learning how to do this. And so there was training, capacity building that happened. And another really important, I think, outcome of this that doesn't always get highlighted is just that the people that live in Cloac are the people that are most informed with the data and with the research and understand what's happening. And that's how it always has been in our communities, and it always should be. But over time, we can lose that knowledge, or we can lose that access to the knowledge, which is a loss of power and a loss of access to resources, or to be able to speak on an important topic or resource. And so that was another sort of outcome of this project that I thought was really cool. And so anyways, this project may not have gotten the attention that it deserved if it wasn't for the body of the partnership coming together and saying, if this is what matters to you all in Cloac, how can we help you make it happen? How can we support this? And so getting funds, getting different partners to the table to help make it happen. I think that's where the partnership was really key for Cloac.
And this is just a highlight of the potential of this idea of local voices collecting the data, building the understanding, of what's happening around their environment in terms of the critical resources that they rely on. And I would go to Joe in terms of, you've already mentioned the Coast Fund trip, but the whole concept of an indigenous guardian network and how that is such a critical piece of what the SSP is going to work on in very close partnership with Tlingit and Haida and the Forest Service. But maybe just describe what you saw in BC and how you, President Peterson, and others wanted that same network for Southeast.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. That definitely was an inspiration. I encourage folks to, I mentioned earlier, look at Coast Funds. Also go look at Indigenous Guardians programs that have been around for a while, but are really starting to grow throughout Canada and on the coast there, British Columbia. And SSP, Sustainable Southeast Partnership, it's a network. It's not even a legal entity right now. All these efforts are really grassroots driven. These ideas aren't coming out of Sealaska headquarters. We're just supporting something that's already working. And this is a fundraising effort to help get it to be actually a little more sustainable and able to take on bigger projects. And the Guardians program, which Tlingit and Haida is at the forefront helping lead, this last year had a powerful announcement, and there's a couple bodies dedicated to that within Tlingit and Haida now, and partnering with the Forest Service. And that's just a starting point. The idea here really is to have enough resources behind the effort here that we're able to grow. So the vision being that all of our communities, all of our villages have our own Indigenous people on the ground, stewarding the land and water as we always have, but doing it in a coordinated way, in a way that that we're able to help leverage partners to come to the table and help. So the partners are really the key thing here. In the Coast Funds model, they weren't funded by indigenous the way we're funding this, starting with Sealaska putting a challenge grant out. It was conservation community and the provincial governments that raised the funds. So it was governments and conservation. The difference in Southeast here is having the indigenous leadership right at the front here with Sealaska, with Click and Haida, really trying to play the regional role and help. But that regional role is only as good as the grassroots village effort and willingness to step forward and help prioritize and move this forward. There are communities that aren't in yet. Before we get to the end of this, we need to talk about a little bit how people get involved, how the communities come to the table. Ralph is in a key role as coordinating the SSP right now. And then there was a question about young Native business men and women, how they get support if they're not shareholders. And Spruce Root was, born with that concept in mind and is providing that kind of technical support to folks. So I think that gets out a bit of it, but I don't know if you want to add more, Elena and Ralph, on the vision. And Seacoast really is a funding mechanism to help ignite a fire under the good work that's already been happening so that we can have more of these projects move in a lot of the other communities. And it's sort of a yes and type of thinking. We know that our issues are huge. It takes local folks, which we call catalysts in the communities, to help corral that energy and prioritize what we're going to tackle next. So that's not getting dictated from many of us here, really. It's being driven from the communities themselves.
I'll just add a couple things to the question around like how do we prioritize communities? Well, we don't, and the we is anyone that's in SSP, which right now, I don't know, Ralph, what's the number? It's like over 100, individuals, like 20 some organizations represented. And up until today, anyone could always join the network. And what would that look like? That would mean showing up for our monthly calls, coming to our twice a year in-person convenings, sharing what you're doing and asking for whatever support you might need. That's at the basic what it is. It's a network of people networking with each other. And so it's very open and inclusive. I think when you throw money out on the table, then people want to know, well, how come I wasn't invited? Or where is this community? And it's such a good question, because where are those communities? They should all be at the table. We should have every Southeast community represented in the SSP, and that's always been our mission. And it's hard when you're trying to convince people to show up, or there's the same person in every community wearing multiple hats. They can't always be able to come to every convening or participate fully. And so we've been working over the years to provide resources so that people can fund a position that would dedicate its time or energy to networking within the partnership. And so at a broad, to answer that question, anyone in any community is the priority and welcome to be involved in SSP. And I'd say reach out to Ralph if you want to know how to do that. And then from the Spruce, to answer the other question on businesses, yeah, Spruce Root is providing workshops and individual coaching to entrepreneurs in Southeast Alaska. And we've been doing this since 2013 and we'll continue to do that. It's a huge need. There's very little resources that are dedicated to people in this region that address the challenges that are faced to businesses in this region. And that's what Spruce Root's been working to build on over these years. So if you wanted to learn more about those programs, I'd say come to our website, spruceroot.org, and you can sign up for support or just learn more on the website there.
I think some key things is, seeing some of the questions that were asked for us here is the ability to find some folks in your community that are willing to collaborate and that are willing to roll up their sleeves and get down to the work without any of the other aspects that usually comes with working within a village. I think that that's one of the key things that you'll see in communities that have stepped up and are heavily involved in here. They said, putting everything else aside, we need this to happen. How do we do that? And that's by getting to the table. That's by give and take. That's by being uncomfortable at times and having those uncomfortable conversations with each other. And I think that was very key for some of the things here. Everything didn't go smooth. Everything doesn't always go smooth. Everybody doesn't agree all the time. We have to have multiple conversations over time and building trust. I think having lined out how this all works, I think in Yakutat, it had everything aligned at the right time for all of these projects to come down. I think we just got very lucky in how the timing of all that went. I think we have some other partnerships that have put in the time and they're about to see some big rewards. Thinking about how each community can build their own strategy and wants to a list is very key. And it involves numerous organizations within the community. We don't ever just work with a single organization. And I think that's the key that makes it work. It has to be bought in by so many other folks, which I think there's some more case studies there that show the multiple agency buy-in, the multiple organization buy-in is where it happens. And it requires getting down to work and rolling up your sleeves. It's not about bickering about, well, who gets credit here, who gets credit there, where's mine? It's about seeing the bigger picture. And I think that's where we're very fortunate to have a lot of communities and partners in here.
Yeah, that's perfect. And there was a question about, the process. I mean, you've just been hitting the process over and over, having the right conversations with the right partners, bringing in the resources that are needed to make a project successful is your model. And you do it within housing, you do it within business, you do it within job training, you do it within the natural resource environment with the Kloak work and the Hoona Native Forest Partnership and the Keekwan Community Forest Partnership. So just the model works of collaboration and shared vision. But one of the questions about what else can this be applied to, I think is worth some comments before we dive back into a couple more case studies, which is health and wellness for our people in our communities is an area that the SSP can use this same model and create success in regards to the health and wellness, not only of our communities, but of our people, because again, working together creates that success. If Joe or any of you want to comment on that concept of healing and wellness for our people and how the SSP can jump into that game.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I just real quickly, because I think part of the question was looking at other sectors or areas to go into, and really there aren't any built-in sideboards to where this can go. It's all about leveraging the will of who's at the table and bringing more resources to bear. And so it's a network of folks that help. And that's just how, when you grow up in the village and your skiff's dried up, do you need help? People are going to run to help get that skiff off the beach. And that's what this is about, is coming to the table to help. So there's not predetermined focus areas. It's driven by who's at the table. That said, you can't do everything all at the same time at once. So it is worth always having that in mind. But one thing that's been at the theme has been the healing idea and the needs. And that means being able to really addressed conflicts and addressed realities and live in a reality where we know collectively and individually, none of us are perfect. And we've been weathering a tough relationship with the federal government, with the state government, with a history of colonization, with the history of schools, with the history of churches. All these things have really put us in a tough spot. But we know we're resilient people when we double down on our indigenous values and remember why we're here and what makes us stronger. And it's usually getting out on the land and taking care of our grandkids. There's no downside to doing that kind of thing and living healthy together. So the healing theme has been a priority. These are all driven by catalysts who are willing to put their attention on this. I think Ralph formerly had a housing catalyst type of theme around in his role. There are other types of catalysts, and there's room we're talking about in the SSP, a catalyst for healing and what that might look like. Search, there's really room for search to come to the table big. So I think the opportunities are, they're boundless, endless, but it's really about who shows up at the table and is really to put in the good work. And we are seeing some of the questions come through. I don't know exactly if they're coming through indirectly in different ways, but there's a yes and mentality. And Ralph, by the end of this, is going to share, that it is open to anybody who wants to come to the table. There's monthly hangouts. There's retreats every few months, and so there's room for people to come and help. There is an acknowledge. There's Mr. Lanos, James. Thanks for sharing about the AMB ANS. We all know that a lot of us wouldn't be here without AMB ANS and the fight from over 100 years ago that started. And there's room. That's actually, there's a common theme there, with most of our villages having still fairly active camps, even though they're often under-resourced. There's opportunity, I would say, for AMB ANS to sync up here with the effort. I'd say big effort, opportunity. So I'll stop there. There are a couple other case studies I think help, and these are things that have already happened or are happening. But the future is really what we create together.
And I think that kind of hits it on the head, Joe, is if you look at the slide that's up right now, you look at the partners in Huna and Cake. I mean, the Forest Service is actively at the table. The Huna Totem, the OVK, I mean, you see Village Corp, Regional Corp, United States government. I mean, you don't see those kind of partnerships in an actual partnership happening. And these two programs here in Kaken and Huna are a great example of what can happen when you get people at the table and you can see the similar goals, vision, mission that they're trying to do, and able to replicate that. It started in Huna, it's moved to Cake. I'm sure there's going to be many more of these kind of partnerships to work with, resource management, resource revitalization. It's just, it's so good to see. And, trying to figure out how you can be involved, by all means, come to the table. Look at sustainablesoutheast.net. That's our website. Email me at ralph@spruceroot.org. Come and see what we do and hang out. That's it. You just have to come and do the work. There's no signing on. There's no letters. You come, you do the work, and you try to help us, or we try to help you, and just keep showing up. That's it. That's how you do it.
And these two partnerships have we go back to the dollars because we want to see new dollars flowing into our communities. I mean, I think HNFP is at the end of its forest partnership will be closing in on $5 million in government funding and partner funding for wildlife habitat, supporting economic development, workforce training in their communities. It just, these are real dollars flowing into our communities that come from SSP efforts and all the great resources and partners that you have. And I would just want to highlight, there's more than these headline partners. The state of Alaska and the Nature Conservancy are both partners in these. So, like Ralph said, any partner that thinks that they can be helpful in terms of creating a resilient environment for their community can be a partner and can work with the SSP. We have one more that kind of speaks to again, the federal government and their willingness to work with us in Southeast Alaska, and their willingness to be led by Native communities and Native voices. And part of the strength of this is just highlighting the breadth of the partners you see on this. But that's, I believe, what the US government took notice of, that the SSP was able to bring all of these partners to the table, create a policy document that then prompted them to write their own sustainable Southeast plan. And maybe Joe or Elena just dive in on the fact that SSP will jump into policy work that is meaningful for our communities as well.
Yeah, just real briefly, this blueprint here, we have this transition at the federal level every now and then with the presidents shifting every 4 years or so. And it was a dramatic shift, from the former president to this administration, and everybody gets in line to put their priorities out there. And when this opportunity came up, through the partnership, we all put our signatures, all these different groups here, to this blueprint document, which was a vision for the Tongass and how we move forward. And these are groups that, in a different generation would meet more often in the courtroom. And now we're actually, because of the partnership, the relationship building, are able to get on the same page on a number of things, literally on the same page, and hand it to President Biden's administration. And within a few weeks, they have quotes about the partnerships within their own partnership strategy and sustainable strategy that they're pushing out there now. They've got direct using the work product of this here for over the years as really to help the federal government shift into a new era of management here. And as with any relationship, it's never perfect, and it's not always pretty. There's tough things you got to work through, but you do it because you find that common purpose. And Elena has been involved more directly, sometimes or more longer than I, because of her spruce root hat. So I don't know if you have thoughts or comments there, just particularly on this here, Elena. But it's for me, I thought, yeah, it was awesome. It's great to visit with some of these executive directors, not in a courtroom, but actually in a place where we're trying to work together for the benefit of our communities here. So it's a whole new era that we're helping put a vision out there for.
Yeah, well, I'll just add that, all those partners listed, they don't agree on everything, and they don't always get along. But before SSP, I'd say those partners would then not work together on any area, even if it was an area where they did agree, not with ease anyways. So now what this blueprint represents to me is the ability to understand that we don't always agree. Maybe we don't see things exactly the same way, but we're willing to work through that and find the area of commonality. And that's what the blueprint represents. And I will kind of pull the curtain back a little, because the partnership is so powerful. I don't think we even realize it sometimes. We had a call with one of the new staffers. I won't name who it is, but someone that works for the administration. And we shared with them the blueprint right after we had put it together and said, well, because they asked us, well, what do you think USDA should be focusing on when it comes to the Tongass? And we said, well, this is a great document that highlights everything that we could tell you. And so it was timely that we had that. And then a couple other meetings happened behind the scenes. And then without any of us even knowing that this was going to happen, then they announced the Southeast Sustainability Plan, which basically was an outline of what we had put in the Tongass Blueprint. And it was just really cool to see how we as a network and as a region are leveraging our collective power to decide and determine what we want to see have happen here. And that's what we always say we want, but now we're really doing it in a meaningful way that I haven't seen in my short time on this planet. But I think, you know, it's where we've always operated in this place as a people, and we're just trying to get back to that. And so that's how I keep reminding myself of that in these anecdotes and these opportunities, that's what we're getting back to, is something we've already known how to do since time immemorial, and we're just getting back to that place. And so the healing, that's where the healing comes in, is learning how to get past these old hurts and these pains that exist in all of our lives and that prevent us as individuals from moving forward, but then prevent us as larger organizations and as a region from moving forward. And so we're slowly getting through those, and we have so much more improvement to make and growth to make. We're not done. And so that's why this trust is so important, because now it's going to give us the ability to get off that hamster wheel of annual funding cycles and just put the money to work, that doing the work that we know needs to happen here, and not relying on the federal government or anyone else to tell us what funds are available for this year, right? So this is so big in my mind to just launching all of this work and effort over the past decade forward into a whole nother decade of just growth and important self-determination.
You said it all. We could close on that, but I know I have one important point to make, is the strength of the tribes as our partners. Having President Peterson, having tribal administrators being on the steering committee, having our tribes lead our efforts, I think is a big part of this $25 million coming into the region, is because our tribes are leading, our indigenous values are leading, and our tribes know the path forward for their communities. And if we could spend a second, and I love this picture in the background with the totem poles, because it gives an indication of why this matters to folks that don't live in Southeast or don't live in our traditional communities. We've heard from our elders, and we've heard stories. No matter where you live, if you're from Huna, if your ancestors are from Angoon, when you go back there, you want to see a healthy community. You want to see the totem poles still standing. So open it to anybody. What does this mean for folks that don't live in Southeast in terms of healthy traditional communities?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. And I think this is our prompt to wind down, knowing that there's going to be more to come and more updates and plenty of room to engage. And you know, we do have more than, or right at half of our shareholders that are not in Alaska right now, but they all have strong connections and ties to this place. That's what it's all about, is this connection to place. And quite a few come back every 2 years, at least. Every 2 years being celebration when we're able to not be in pandemic mode. But other than that, you know, we've always been a seasonal people that traveled and went back and forth and come back. And it is those healthy communities where we have both the young kids and our grandparents living together out on the land is what it's all about. And we need to shore that up and make sure that 10 years from now, the next census happens, that we're not losing population, that we're, turning this corner and not holding just steady like we're barely doing now, but actually growing our rural economies, our villages, and having our schools going back up to, more of that 2A rather than the 1A, and getting to another level here. And it's all that coming back, having strong economies to come back home to. That's sort of the point. There was comments on that. And one of the more recent additions in the Catalyst team of Catalyst is a workforce development catalyst. So we know it's not just money, it's also building up our workforce, and making sure that we have the human capital ready to go in all the villages. So I offered up to, maybe Elena for her final comment, and then Ralph, and we'll wind this one down, and we will schedule another one of these in the near future here.
No, I think all I'll say is that I just appreciate, Sealaska for stepping up and leading the way in this way. I don't think 10 years ago I would have believed Sealaska would do something like this. So it's really, I think in my mind, it's a direct response to what shareholders are saying they want, and to the purpose that Sealaska was set up for. So I appreciate the leadership at the board level and at the management level. Ganesh.
Go ahead, Ralph. There you go.
I think, so with so many things said and so much information from here, I think our name says a lot. Sustainable, partnership, Southeast, right? Those three keywords. We need sustainability so that there's some place to come back to. We need partnerships so that there's resources that we can hang on to and still celebrate our culture through, like fish and trees, education, culture. We need new totem poles to replace those old totem poles that will eventually lay over and go back to the ground. We need collaboration so that we're moving forward and not just stymieing ourselves and holding ourselves accountable. We need partnerships to make sure my kids can stay here and their kids can come here in Yakutat and in Craig, because both are so dear to me, and everything in between has to be in place. We have to look holistically at an approach. And I think that we are able to do that in a different way under a different foundation, that it's not me, it's we, and we are here to go forward and to keep moving the communities back to what we see in our eyes as our homelands and thriving. And I think that that's where I got hooked. And that's where I love my job every day, seeing this happen. So, good cheese.
Sheesh. Thank you, Ralph. There's no more us and them. It's just us. Anthony's going to offer the closing comment. We're all in it together, and we're going to wind down with Anthony's comment, and we'll tune in and see everybody again soon, and hopefully sometime soon in person, sometime not too far down the road.
Now, closing comment is Ganesh, how for being with us, and to Ralph and Elena. And yes, reach out to Ralph and Elena to find your ways into partnering with the network, but reach out to Joe and I for any additional questions as well. We are knee deep in this, working side by side, all the partners. And just like Ralph said, best part of my day is working in our communities with partners who want to do good things for our communities. So Ganesh, and thank you to our communications team for putting this together, and more to come.